Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the opening gala of Dinner of the Robert Menzies Institute. And before commencing this evening, I'd like to acknowledge the people of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which the Institute stands. Now, we've got a number of special guests with us here tonight, including the Treasurer and guest speaker, the Honourable Josh Frydenberg, who incidentally tells me he probably flew down on Virgin and that's why he's late. Also the Minister Alan Tudge, Senator Jane Hume and the Honourable Tim Wilson MP. Also those involved with the formation of the Institute, Alan Myers, Chancellor of the Melbourne University, Paul Espy, Chairman of the Menzies Research Centre, and the Centre's Executive Director Nick Cater, whose idea it was to establish the Institute. Also present are Peter Costello, former Treasurer, former #1 ticket holder of Essendon, and former Ministers Richard Olsen, Brendan Nelson, former Premier of Victoria Ted Baillieu, and the federal MPs Katie Allen, Senator James Patterson, and from the Victorian Parliament, Louise Staley and Cindy McLeish. And as I said, the Robert Menzies Institute was born from an initiative of the Menzies Research Centre and supported by the Cormack Foundation, represented this evening by Charles Good, and with the support of the federal government and the University of Melbourne. I'd also like to thank, in the establishment of the Institute, my fellow Institute board members, David Kemp, Sue Baker, Ian Harper, Peter Credlin and Jeff Home, all of whom are here this evening. Now, Robert Menzies was Australia's longest-serving Prime Minister, and whilst, unlike many today in Australia and globally, left office of his own accord after having won collectively 7 elections. He was very much the architect of modern Australia, from education to immigration and the development of relations with the United States and our near neighbours. The Institute is an academic endeavour which seeks to explore his legacy and ensure that his history is not forgotten. Now, I'd like now to hand over to Georgina, who has capably led the Institute in its short existence, to say a few words about the Institute and where we're going. So thank you very much and enjoy this evening.
Thank you so much, Lee. It really is so wonderful to be here tonight to finally celebrate our opening. And as Lee mentioned, there are so many special guests with us here tonight. We've actually been overwhelmed by the support, and we sold out, which was just incredible for an opening inaugural event. And we particularly appreciate all your enthusiasm to squeeze into your evening dresses and your dinner jackets. I know personally that is no mean feat after the world's longest lockdown here in Melbourne. I would particularly like to acknowledge, in addition to those who Lee has already acknowledged, a really special guest in the room tonight, Diana Menzies. Diana is Sir Robert's granddaughter, and it's just wonderful to have a representative of the Menzies family here to share this really, really special occasion with us. As you can appreciate, planning an inaugural event in Melbourne over the last year has not been without its challenges. Thank you to the Premier, who has made Melbourne a very challenging place for startups like the Robert Menzies Institute. When we were discussing this event, there was a mention of a Zoom opening gala, but that really, the thought of that brought shivers down my spine. I think we'll all be very pleased to see the back end of Zoom at the end of this year. But our optimism for Melbourne's great reopening didn't diminish despite the soaring cases of COVID-19 in August. And I am so thrilled that today, not only are we here tonight, but we were actually able to hold our first conference in the old quad at Melbourne University. Another sellout, which was great. We were allowed 65 people in the old quad, and we had 11 extraordinary speakers addressing Menzies' early years, his success, his failure and his resilience. And it was fantastic to see a diverse range of academics, of commentators, of intellectuals, journalists come together to really thrash out what were the original influences of Sir Robert Menzies and that laid the foundation for his governments in later years. Originally, this dinner was planned to be held in the old quad at Melbourne Uni, but as you can imagine, COVID and density restrictions meant that that's not been possible. So tonight, I am going to bring the old quad to you. You will get a taste of the Robert Menzies Institute's home in the historic old quad at Melbourne Uni, and also hear a bit from my team about what we're planning to do at the Institute, and some very special messages from Sir Robert's daughter, the amazing 93-year-old, I don't think she'd mind me telling you, Heather Henderson. The Robert Menzies Institute at the University of Melbourne is a prime ministerial library and museum dedicated to the life and legacy of Sir Robert Menzies, Australia's longest serving Prime Minister. And the Robert Menzies Institute has been established at Melbourne University in the beautiful and historic old quad in the heart of the university.
Melbourne University was very important in my father's life.
Sir Robert started his university education here at Melbourne Uni as a law student from 1913 to 17. He then went on to have a glittering career at the bar and then into politics. But it was after his retirement from politics he came back to Melbourne University as Chancellor.
In 1976, Robert Menzies bequeathed his library and collection of almost 4,000 items to the University of Melbourne, which was his alma mater. And the collection is a unique historical artefact.
The overall theme of the exhibition is to provide a multifaceted view of Menzies as a man, a family member, a leader and a Prime Minister of Australia. The exhibition will be across 2 rooms and will mainly be showcasing the items from the Menzies collection at the University of Melbourne. The foyer will be dedicated to his political ideologies and how the development of his thought occurred over a period of time leading up to the establishment of the Liberal Party. The Menzies room will focus more on how he was successful in that role in helping to build Australia in the post-war era.
It's very significant to have an intact entire collection of what an important figure was reading, how they engaged with those works.
Reading was immensely important to him. And if you look at what is in that library, it's an enormous range of books.
There are 2 copies of The Road to Serfdom in the collection, and the original copy that Menzies has shows signs of intense youth. And there's even some aspects of the speeches he gives at the conference in Canberra that helps to develop the Liberal Party that show clear signs that he's being influenced by these Hayekian ideas. And we're able to back that up by looking at the book itself.
One of the exciting objects we have is an inscription from Winston Churchill in one of Menzies' books, which really highlights the relationship between the 2 leaders. We have a Legion of Merit medal awarded to Menzies by President Truman, which really highlights that strong relationship that started to build between Australia and the US in that post-war era.
It all adds up to the whole story of Menzies' life. And it's such a wonderful thing to have it all together like this.
Was the ideas that Sir Robert championed, a real commitment to individual liberty, to private enterprise, to the importance of families and the importance of education and nation building that built Australia to the successful, modern and prosperous nation that it is today.
And the reason Robert Menzies put such a focus into education was because he was a real believer in the value of a broad liberal education that would involve things like philosophy, it would involve things like history, and it would create a leading intellectual and political class in Australia that could make informed decisions that would really benefit Australian citizens and Australian society.
Their teaching curriculum doesn't actually really focus on Robert Menzies and the legacy that he had, and we hope to rewrite this wrong by really engaging with school groups, with teachers, and providing them the resources that they need to promote the education surrounding what Robert Menzies did and the lessons we can learn from the way in which he led.
And I think it's very important that he should be remembered in the future, which is why I like this institute, because future generations can come here, look round, learn something about Menzies and what sort of person he was.
So there could be no more fitting place in Australia than Melbourne University to be home to the Robert Menzies Institute. As you can see, we have a particularly beautiful home. We are so very lucky. Success has, of course, 1,000 fathers, and in this case, there are so many people who are the fathers and mothers of the Robert Menzies Institute. But I did want to make particular mention of Nick Cater, the Executive Director of the MRC, the Menzies Research Centre, who dared to dream of a library for Sir Robert way back in 2015, and now we are here today and it's finally done. So well done, Nick. And of course, the University of Melbourne, particularly the Vice-Chancellor at the time, Glyn Davis, and his successor, Duncan Maskell, and the Chancellor who's here tonight, Alan Myers, for really helping make this institute happen. I'd also like to acknowledge the efforts of Tony Snell, who's here tonight. Thank you, Tony. Simon Troth. And Meredith Jackson, who unfortunately Anastasia Palaszczuk hasn't allowed to leave Queensland. But all of those people helped steer the institute to its establishment. After his family and his country, Sir Robert's abiding passion was education, and we spoke about this a lot today in the conference. In one of his Forgotten People broadcasts, in the midst of World War II, Sir Robert said, "Above all, we shall need clear minds, honest minds, courageous minds, well-informed minds. In a word, educated minds. For the simple and unpalatable truth is that our democratic system cannot continue if its motive power is to be a mixture of class selfishness, materialism, disregard for minorities, and a somewhat lazy indifference to the future." As you saw in that video, the Institute has a large agenda ahead of it, but something I do feel very strongly about is our schools program. The Australian curriculum, and I'm looking at you, Alan Tudge, wherever you are. There you go, Alan. The Australian curriculum does not have a single mention of Robert Menzies in it. I'm very pleased to hear that. Next year, we will be working with education professionals and the Parliamentary Education Office to develop schools curriculum materials to help teachers and students understand more about Menzies, the man, his ideas, and his enduring legacy. Thank you so much for your support.